She was only supposed to empty the trash, not save a $4 billion company. 3-line note. One yellow post-it, stuck on a signature page at 3 in the morning, would kill a $500 million deal, hand a janitor from Little Village the keys to the kingdom, and start a slow, stubborn love story between two people who had spent their whole lives being told they didn't belong anywhere near each other. This is the night the invisible woman became the only person in the building who could see clearly. This is the night Marisol Delgado decided one hidden footnote had already taken too much from too many. The wind off the Chicago River sliced straight through the lobby doors and went looking for skin. Marisol Delgado tugged the hood of her old Pilsen hoodie tighter under the navy uniform jacket, badge number 414, catching the harsh lobby light like it was proud of surviving another winter. 9 years of night shifts had carved the route into her bones. Freight elevator to 45, trash and fingerprints on the trading floor. Then up to 50, where the air tasted expensive and the secrets were printed on heavier paper. The cart wheels rolled quiet over polished concrete, knowing every squeak, every blind spot the cameras never quite caught. She moved like she belonged to the dark, not like she was afraid of it. RiverPay never fully shut down. The trading floor glowed underwater blue, numbers swimming in circles 24 hours a day. But the executive wing went black at 1, motion sensors killing the lights floor by floor like someone pulling a blanket over a sleeping child. Only the city stayed awake outside the curved green glass, orange streetlights bleeding across the frozen river in long, shaky ribbons. Caleb Whitaker's corner office door stood open 6 inches, the way it always did. He didn't believe in locking anything inside his own company, said it made people nervous. Mari nudged the door wider with her hip and rolled the cart in. The room smelled like cold coffee reheated too many times, cedar cologne, and the sharp metallic scent of someone who had been running on adrenaline for weeks. Papers were scattered like autumn leaves. A gray hoodie hung off the back of the Eames chair like it had given up. One lonely sock lay under the sofa, defeated. In the center of the glass table sat the term sheet. Thick, creamy stock, navy binding, colored tabs marching down the edge like obedient soldiers. $500 million waiting for one signature tomorrow morning. The whole building had been whispering about it for weeks, afraid to say the number too loud in case the money got scared and ran. Mari started with the trash the way she always did. 2 silver Red Bull cans, he was back on those. A crumpled first-class boarding pass from London, still smelling faintly of jet fuel. The foil from somebody's late-night al pastor burrito that made her stomach twist with homesickness. She wiped a muddy shoe print from the leather sofa, then moved to the table. Her reflection stared back from the glass, tired brown eyes, mouth set hard the way her mother's used to set when the rent was late, hair twisted up under the ugly required cap. She lifted the microfiber cloth. The stack shifted when her elbow brushed it. Just an inch. Enough. Gravity took over. The pages sighed open in a perfect fan, like the document itself wanted to breathe. Schedule 4.1 looked up at her like it had been waiting its whole life for this moment. Post-money ownership and liquidation preferences. Series D preferred. Conversion ratio adjustment table. Milestone failure triggers. Crown Atlantic sole discretion. The words were dense, lawyer-thick, designed to make normal eyes slide off. But the numbers underneath were naked and screaming. Base case, 1:1 conversion. Trigger event, 1:7. 7 common shares for every preferred share if RiverPay missed a milestone. And the milestones weren't normal ones like revenue or users. They were things like material adverse change in regulatory sentiment and failure to maintain key partnerships at Crown Atlantic's reasonable satisfaction. Crown Atlantic decided what counted. Crown Atlantic held the measuring tape and the gun. Footnote C. On page 187, buried under 2 pages of definitions nobody ever read, made it legal. Mari's hand froze mid-wipe. The cloth dripped 1 drop of blue cleaner that spread across the glass like a bruise. She had seen this exact trick before, just wearing cheaper clothes. When Luis died crushed between pallets in a Cicero warehouse, the workers' comp insurer sent a letter on thick letterhead that looked kind and official. One clause nobody noticed until it was too late. Benefits void if required safety decal missing or illegible. The forklift had been missing that decal for 3 years. Nobody ever checked. 1 footnote and Mateo lost his father. They lost the house. and Mari learned that the world will let you bleed out through a loophole nobody bothered to read. Tomorrow morning, Caleb Whitaker would walk in here, still half drunk from no sleep, grab the Mont Blanc pen she had dusted 100 times, and sign his name right under executed. He would think he was buying 2 more years of runway. He would actually be selling the entire company to a London hedge fund that had already written the press release about its strategic acquisition of RiverPay infrastructure. Her pulse hammered so loud she was sure the motion sensors would catch it and flood the room with light. She was just the cleaning lady. She wasn't supposed to read. She definitely wasn't supposed to care. But her fingers were already moving. The lucite cube of yellow post, it sat on the corner of his desk, always full because nobody except her ever refilled it. The thick black Sharpie lived right beside it like it had been waiting for her. She wrote in the same careful block letters she used on Mateo's school forms so the teachers wouldn't think she was ignorant. This is wrong. Look at Schedule 4.1 footnote, C, 1:7 conversion trap. They will own you in 2 years. Night crew. Her hand shook when she peeled the backing, shook harder when she pressed the square dead center on the signature block, right where the pen would have to move it or sign around it. She closed the document, aligned the edges perfectly, stepped back. For one heartbeat, she thought about ripping the note off, pretending she had never seen anything, going back to her cart and her route and the life where nobody ever asked her opinion because nobody thought she had won. Then she thought about Mateo lining up his trains by color every morning, humming the same 8 notes over and over because the world was too loud and trains made sense. She thought about the waiting list for the therapeutic school that cost more per year than she made in 2. She thought about footnotes that killed people slowly. She left the note exactly where it was. She turned off his lights on the way out. The door clicked shut soft as a secret. Down in the basement, she clocked out at 5:58, hands trembling so hard she almost dropped her badge. The L train rattled west through the dark, almost empty except for the drunks and the people who kept the city alive while it pretended to sleep. She pressed her forehead to the cold window and watched the lights smear past like wet paint. The yellow square glowed behind her eyes the whole way home. Bright, impossible, already changing everything. Caleb Whitaker walked into his office at 8:12 smelling like yesterday's victory lap and this morning's panic. He had slept maybe 90 minutes on the boardroom sofa, shoes still on, tie knotted like a hangman's knot. The Series D closing was supposed to be the final scene of the movie where the kid from the trailer park finally wins. Instead, it felt like the night before a funeral. He dropped his coat on the floor, kicked the door shut, and went straight for the term sheet. One signature, one photo, one step closer to never having to beg for money again. The yellow post-it hit him like a brick to the face. This is wrong. Look at Schedule 4.1 footnote, C, 1:7 conversion trap. They will own you in 2 years. Night crew. He read it once, blinked hard, read it again slower, mouthing the words like they were in a foreign language. They weren't. They were in perfect, brutal English. Cal had built RiverPay on the certainty that he was the smartest person in every room he walked into. MIT at 17 on a full ride. First employee at a crypto exchange that flipped for 9 figures before he was 21. Then RiverPay out of a dorm because banks were dinosaurs, and he wasn't. He had stared down Sandhill Road vultures who smelled blood and smiled while they bled. He did not get rattled by anonymous sticky notes. Yet his stomach dropped so fast the room tilted. He sat down hard, opened his MacBook, fingers already flying, pulled the final PDF the lawyers had sent at 3:47 a.m. Control F, 4.1. Found the table. Found footnote, C, on page 187. Built the waterfall model himself, something he hadn't touched since the seed round because he paid people obscene money to do it for him now. He typed the triggers, the discretion language, the conversion flip, ran the numbers 4 different ways, changing every assumption to favor RiverPay. Same answer every single time. 78% to Crown Atlantic on any exit if they decided a milestone was missed. And they got to decide. All of it legal, all of it hidden behind 3 lines nobody reads twice. Cal stared at the screen until the numbers burned green holes in his vision. Then he laughed, one short, ugly bark that echoed off the glass walls. He had almost signed his own death warrant with a smile. He grabbed the desk phone, punched the intercom for his assistant even though she wouldn't be in for another 20 minutes. Get Hirsch. Get every partner who touched this deal. Tell them to run. He hung up before anyone could answer. By 8:47, the 50th floor looked like a war room. Lawyers in yesterday's suits, eyes red from all-nighters, laptops open on every flat surface. Jonah Hirsch, general counsel, kept trying to explain that the language was standard for late-stage European preferred, until Cal slid the waterfall printout across the table and watched the man's face go the color of old oatmeal. Standard. Cal's voice was quiet the way a frozen river is quiet right before it breaks. Standard is 1x liquidation preference. This is a loaded gun with the serial number filed off. Jonah opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. We can push back on the triggers. We're not pushing back on anything. We're killing it. Tell Crown Atlantic the deal is off. Effective immediately, the room detonated. Someone screamed about the $2 million break fee. Someone else started calculating how many board seats they were about to lose. Someone in the corner actually started crying. Cal tuned it all out and stared at the post. It still stuck to the signature page like a flare. Night crew. He picked up his cell, called Building Security Direct. I need footage. 50th floor, my office, last night after midnight. Every camera. Now. 12 minutes later, he watched it on the big screen in the conference room. A woman in Navy uniform rolled her cart in, emptied his trash, wiped the table. The stack fanned open. She froze, shoulders rising and falling once. Hard, like someone had punched her in the chest. Then she reached for the post-it cube, wrote fast, stuck the note square on the signature line, straightened the pages, turned off the lights, and walked out without ever looking back. Badge number 414. Delgado Marisol. He knew the name the way he knew the name of the barista who spelled cow wrong every morning. Seen it on payroll reports for years, never connected it to a face. Never once wondered who kept his office from smelling like a frat house. Now it was the only name in the world that mattered. By noon the deal was dead. Press release rewritten to say RiverPay had decided to explore strategic alternatives at a more measured pace. The board called an emergency meeting and screamed for 45 minutes. The bankers threatened to pull every future deal in the pipeline. Cal told them all to get in line and waited for the one person who had actually saved them. He found her in the basement break room at 2:47 p.m. The place smelled like bleach and old tamales. One flickering fluorescent tube, vending machines that had been broken since the Clinton administration, a table with one leg held together by silver duct tape. Marisol sat alone, elbows on the table, slowly unwrapping a cold tamal from foil like it might be her last meal. She still had her uniform on, hair twisted up under the cap, eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum like she was already somewhere far away. Cal pulled out the chair across from her and sat without asking. She looked up. Recognition hit, then pure terror. I'm sorry, she said, Spanish first, then English. I know I wasn't supposed to look. I know I'm fired. I'll clean out my locker. Did you write this? He placed the yellow note between them like evidence in a trial. She stared at it, nodded once, barely. Tell me how you saw it. Her voice came out small, but steady. The pages fell open. The numbers, they were screaming. I've heard that kind of screaming before. She told him about Luis. About the forklift. About the decal nobody checked and the letter that came after. She didn't look at him once, just kept smoothing the foil flat with her thumb like she could iron the past if she pressed hard enough. When she finished, the humming vending machine was the only sound. Cal leaned forward. Show me. Right now? With a napkin. She hesitated, then took the pen he slid across the table. On the back of her foil, she drew 2 columns, before trigger, after trigger. Boxes for preferred shares, boxes for common. She wrote the ratios, the percentages, the way the pie got sliced if Crown Atlantic pulled the string. 5 minutes. No jargon. Clearer than any Goldman slide deck he had ever sat through. When she finished, she pushed the foil toward him like it might explode. He stared at it for a long time. Then he looked up at her. Really looked. The tired eyes, the mouth that had forgotten how to smile, the hands that were rough from work and still somehow elegant. You just saved $4 billion of other people's money, he said quietly. And probably my life. She gave a tiny shake of the head. I just didn't want another family to lose everything to a footnote. Cal stood. Come with me. She followed because what else could she do? Up the freight elevator, through the trading floor where traders stopped mid-sentence to stare, into the executive conference room, that looked out over the whole frozen city. He closed the door. Marisol Delgado, he said to the empty table like he was announcing it to the river itself. Effective immediately, you are Senior Deal Review Analyst, Special Projects. Salary 250,000 base, full benefits, reporting directly to me. No degree required. You start today. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. He kept going. HR will have paperwork in an hour. Your son's therapy, the school with the waiting list? Covered. All of it. And there's a trust. 500,000. Vest when he turns 18. She swayed like the floor had moved. I don't understand, she whispered. You will, he said. Because from this moment forward, nothing gets signed in this company until Mari Delgado reads it first. He stuck out his hand like they were meeting for the first time. She looked at it, then at him, eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. Slowly, carefully, she took it. Her grip was stronger than he expected. Outside the window, the river kept moving, cold and unstoppable, carrying the city forward whether it was ready or not. 6 months disappeared in a blur of red pens, late-night burritos, and the soft click of a door that no longer belonged to the cleaning crew. Mari's new office had started life as a storage closet on 50, but Cal had the shelves ripped out, a window punched into the wall, and a real desk installed, solid oak, no glass, because she said glass showed fingerprints and fingerprints made her nervous. The whiteboard was always covered in her neat block handwriting. Arrows, waterfalls, percentages circled in red like blood. The traders started calling her the Undertaker behind her back. Deals went in alive and came out either clean or dead. Cal brought her into every meeting now. At first, the investment bankers smirked at the woman in simple navy dresses who never wore heels and carried a legal pad instead of a Birkin. Then she opened her mouth, asked one quiet question about liquidation waterfalls or drag-along rights, and the smirks died mid-face. By the third meeting, nobody smirked anymore. They worked until the new night crew showed up. Mari had insisted her old team keep their jobs and get raises. Some nights, it was just the two of them, city lights glittering below, takeout containers stacked like skyscrapers. He discovered she liked her burritos con todo except Sabala, and that she could eat an entire one without getting a single spot on the documents. She discovered he took his coffee black and his apologies almost never. One night, he found her asleep at her desk, cheek on a term sheet, hair escaping its twist in soft black waves. He draped his hoodie over her shoulders, the same gray one that used to live on his chair, and sat in the dark watching the river lights dance across the ceiling until she woke up, startled and mortified. I'm sorry, Don't be, he said. You look better in that than I ever did. She laughed, a real laugh that started in her belly and spilled out like she'd forgotten she knew how. The sound cracked something open in his chest he hadn't known was frozen. He met Mateo the first Saturday the trains were running on time. Mari's apartment in Little Village smelled like masa and cinnamon. Mateo sat cross-legged on the living room rug lining up his toy Metra cars by color and length, humming the same 8 notes over and over in perfect rhythm. Cal sat down beside him without asking and waited. 10 silent minutes later, Mateo looked up, studied Cal's face the way he studied everything, then handed him the silver engine. That one's the fastest, Mateo announced. Cal took it like it was the Stanley Cup. Mari stood in the doorway watching, eyes shining so bright she had to turn away and pretend she was busy with dishes. Christmas Eve, she invited him to make tamales. Her mother's tiny kitchen, the old radio playing villancicos, steam fogging the windows. He got masa in his hair and burned his thumb on the steamer and laughed more than he had in years. When they carried the pot to the table, their fingers brushed and neither of them moved away. Crown Atlantic never forgot the insult. They came back in the spring with a new term sheet, prettier paper, bigger check, poison buried deeper. Triple participating preferred, full ratchet anti-dilution, a board seat with veto power over product roadmap and office coffee brand. The bankers drooled. The board salivated. Cal laughed when he saw the valuation. Then he slid the 312 pages across the table to Mari at 3 a.m. and watched her face go very still. She found the new trap on page 214, one sentence about regulatory event mandatory redemption that would let Crown force a sale at whatever price they declared the day crypto had its next bad headline. She circled it in red so hard the pen tore the paper. Cal killed the deal before the sun came up. Crown threatened to sue for breach. They leaked stories to Bloomberg calling RiverPay's management erratic and unprofessional. The stock dipped 23% in a single day. Message board kids started memes of Cal wearing a tinfoil hat. Cal scheduled the IPO roadshow instead. The night before the final filing, Mari found him on the roof, wind whipping his tie over his shoulder, city spread out below them like circuitry. "They're not going to stop," she said, leaning on the railing beside him. "I know," he said, "but this time the whole world gets to bid. Not just one shark in a bespoke suit." She was quiet for a long time, hair flying loose around her face. "You believed me," she said finally. "That first day, you didn't laugh. You didn't call security. You just believed me." He turned to her, really turned, and the city disappeared. "I was too arrogant to see what was right in front of me," he said. "You weren't. That's the difference between us." She looked at him then, eyes dark and steady. "I was invisible for 35 years, she said. "Turns out all I needed was one person willing to look." The wind pressed them closer. Their sleeves touched. Neither moved away. Somewhere below, the river kept moving, carrying barges and secrets and the reflection of 1,000 lights toward the lake. Neither of them kissed the other that night. They didn't need to. Something bigger than a kiss had already started, slow and certain as sunrise. The morning the Nasdaq bell rang, the sky over Times Square was the color of cold steel, but inside the building it felt like the 4th of July and Christmas collided. RIVR opened at 42 and never blinked. By the time the first hour ended it was north of 120. By lunch it was flirting with 170. Up 312% in a single morning. The floor was champagne corks and camera flashes and strangers trying to hug Cal like they'd been best friends since kindergarten. He slipped away the second the ceremonial bell finished its echo. He found them in the family section, exactly where he'd asked them to wait. Mateo stood on his chair waving a paper flag he'd colored himself. A silver Metra train with RIVR written on the side in careful 10-year-old letters. His eyes were huge, taking in the noise, the lights, the thousands of people, but he wasn't melting down. He was smiling so wide his cheeks would hurt tomorrow. Mari stood beside him in the same simple navy dress she'd worn the first day she walked into the executive conference room. Only now it fit her like it had been waiting its whole life for this moment. Her hair was down, black and shining under the lights, and for the first time in 10 years, she wasn't hiding behind a cap or a ponytail or exhaustion. Cal crouched in front of Mateo. "Hey, engineer," he said. "You ready to ring the real bell next time?" Mateo nodded solemnly and held out the red engine from his pocket, the one he never let anyone touch. Cal took it like it was solid gold. Then he stood and looked at Mari. The applause was still thundering, but the only sound he heard was his own heart trying to climb out of his chest. He leaned in so only she could hear. "Still think you're just the cleaning lady?" She smiled, the smile she had kept locked away since the night Luis never came home, bright enough to power the entire marquee outside. "No," she said. "Now I'm the one who makes sure this is wrong never happens again." He took her hand in front of every camera, every reporter, every trader who had once looked through her like she was made of glass. He laced their fingers together and didn't let go. The ticker kept climbing, green numbers racing across the bottom of every screen in the building like a promise finally kept. Later, when the champagne was gone and the photographers had their shots, Cal led them up to the new boardroom on the 52nd floor. The river curved below them, sunlight flashing off the water like it was celebrating too. On the wall, framed in simple black wood, hung the original yellow post-it under museum glass. "This is wrong. Look at Schedule 4.1 footnote, C, 1:7 conversion trap. They will own you in 2 years. Night crew." Underneath, a small brass plaque had been added that morning. Some footnotes destroy lives. This one saved a company, a boy's future, and 2 people who thought they had already lost their shot. Every new deal, every term sheet, every contract that came into RiverPay now had to pass beneath that frame. Cal stood behind Mari, arms around her waist, chin resting on her hair, while Mateo pressed his nose to the window and watched the trains far below on the tracks along the river. The city moved on, loud and fast and unforgiving. But up here, for the first time in either of their lives, 3 people who had once been invisible stood in the light and belonged exactly where they were. The bell had rung. The numbers were green. And the yellow post-it, 3 lines that changed everything finally had the last word.